Greg, if you want to go ahead and load your screen, we'll just kind of make that change because we're about a minute out.
Okay.
Get me off so that you guys are the only key people we got to look at.
Well, it's just, yeah, there it is, straight up 12 noon, and that's when the clock says we're supposed to start. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the Moo University Dairy Webinar Series. We look like we're going to have a good group. So if you have questions during the program, just go ahead and enter them in the chat. At the end of the program, we'll go ahead and try to cover those. And at that point, we may even just allow people to unmute and ask questions directly. Today's presenter is Greg Pallas. He's the manager of DRMS services there at Iowa State. He's been with the DHI Processing Center for over 40 years. And I know he hates it when I point this out, but we actually went to school together, Greg. So one of us aged really well and one of us didn't. Let the people figure that out. Today, Greg will outline how the KeepOrBeef assigns an economic value to the cow and a value to each of three potential matings. Sex dairy semen, conventional dairy semen, or beef semen, a topic that right now is very important to dairy producers across the country and actually around the world. So, as I always say, Greg, the podium is yours.
Okay, well, thank you, Fred. And we'll have that debate as far as who aged the best. So right now, I think it's probably you. So thank you for giving the opportunity to talk with your group today about our new product that we called KeepOrBeef. As Fred had mentioned, I work for DRMS, which is the largest DHA processing center in the U.S. Right now, we process probably about half the cows on DHA and about 70% of the herds. So all herds all the way from California to Texas, New York. We have a herd in every state. So KeepOrBeef is our new web product that we have available. So over the years, a variety of different breeding strategies and selection options have been used. Sex semen has enabled producers to increase the number of replacement animals from their better producers and genetic heifers, and provide more options to replace cows that are low producing, have reproductive problems, or just not healthy. Genomic testing has been used to determine the highest genetic merit cows and heifers, and has really accelerated a herd's overall genetic progress, especially when combined with sex semen. Typically, the most valuable animals are bred to sex semen at first service, and conventional semen is usually used for later services. Over the past few years, producers have added another option for making breeding decisions, and that is the use of beef semen. This is because dairy farmers want to take advantage of higher revenues from a dairy beef calf as opposed to a dairy bull calf, and also have sufficient number of replacements. With so many options available, including using cows as embryo donors or recipients, decisions regarding which animals to replace and which animals to breed and the type of semen to use has become increasingly complex. Producers typically consider only a couple of key individual performance measures in that decision-making process. So the questions would be, should the cow be replaced? If so, when's the best time to call her? What type of semen should we be using? And should we breed her now or should we wait? And producers need to think about what's the best way to answer these type of questions. KeepOrBeef is our new web-based decision tool that will reduce the guesswork and simplify the process of making replacement and breeding decisions. It uses a broader range of cow performance data and genetic information that is pulled from either the DART sync data or the last test day. So DART sync is a process with herds that are using PC DART. They can upload their DART sync or DART save data directly to DRMS on a daily basis for backup purposes. And now we're starting to use that more timely information in our web-based tools. But you don't have to be using PC DART in order to use the KeepOrBeef tool. We can also base upon their last test day information as they process through DRMS. So the data that we will use on individual cows is her lactation number, her status, whether she's milking or dry, last 2 test day information for milk, fat, and protein, her current lactation to date record, her past lactation, if she's an older cow, how many days of milk she currently is, her repro status, whether she's bred, pregnant, or she's open, and her genetic information. So we're looking at the net merit dollars value for each individual cow. So that's the cow information that goes into our new KeepOrBeef tool. Then we also pull in some herd average values from either the DART sync or the test day data. So for that, we're looking at the 305-day production data for milk, fat, and protein for each of the lactation groups, cow conception rate, the cow's first service conception rate, the cow heat detection rate, heifer detection rate, heifer first service conception rate, the milk price, fat and protein differential, and the fat and protein price per pound. So all that information is pulled directly from either their last DHI test day or from the DART sync data. The next part that goes into this KeepOrBeef decision tool is that an individual producer or consultant needs to enter some additional data. So that would be, what is the average heifer raising cost? What is their cull revenue? What's the conventional dairy semen cost, sex dairy semen cost, and beef semen cost? What's the calf revenue from a dairy bull or a dairy beef calf? What's the dry matter cost, price per pound? And then we also ask them, what is their emphasis on breeding to beef? If range from 0 to 100, 0 would mean that they're not using any beef semen and don't plan to. And 100 means that they're using primarily beef. So any of that range or scale can be changed in making the best decision in use for this KeepOrBeef decision model. So now we're going to actually go to our web products. So after the producer or consultant has logged in, they'll see a new drop-down menu called Herd HQ. So these are our new Herd HQ products that are available, our new web products. And then you'll go down to the KeepOrBeef option. Now, I've already created a KeepOrBeef setup. When a new user goes in, they'll see something that looks like this. So the first time you go in, you'll want to record a report name. So you can put multiple strategies in here. Or if you happen to be a consultant and you want to run it differently for different herds, you can design a name whichever you want. So I'm just going to go ahead and put in webinar. I will use the herd code. I've logged in as a producer, so the herd code is automatically filled for me. As a consultant, you would enter in the herd code and the rack code, which is the permission access code. The next thing is if you do want to use it for different strings, if a herd is broken up by strings, you can select on different strings. Choose what breed you want to evaluate. I'm just going to go ahead and select all. This happens to be just a Holstein herd. But otherwise, if you do want to have multiple breeds in your herd, you want to run them separately, you can do that. Data source. We talked about whether the data is coming from test day. So whether it's want to use your last DHI process data that goes through DRMS, or if you are using PC Dart and you want to use your Dart Sync upload data. So we obviously encourage you to use the PC Dart and upload your data to us on a daily basis so you have more timely information. Then I can choose whether I want to evaluate cows or heifers or both. Once I have these parameters all filled in, we'll click on the update DRMS parameters. And as we see here, these are the herd information that we talked about previously that will be auto-filled and pulled in, as well as the milk price. So now I can go ahead and fill in my specific information, our heifer raising costs. The question marks over here kind of helps you give you a range as to what those values should be. Our call cow revenue price. We wanted to record our conventional dairy semen costs, our sex semen, our beef semen costs, our dairy bull calf revenue, and our dairy beef calf revenue. The next thing I want to put in here is a dry matter cost. And then we have this emphasis on breeding to beef. We talked about that a little bit earlier as far as what % of our herd we want to breed to beef. If we're using quite a bit of beef, at least 50% or more, you may want to push this up into the 80s, whichever you, and you can run this multiple times. So depending upon what your output is and where you think things are. So then we'll click on save. So this now has saved our setup. Then the next thing you do is you'll click on Run KeepOrBeef Report. Now this is a very involved algorithm that it runs through. As I mentioned before, all that data that we looked on individual cows. I'm not going to run this. Right now, this is about 1,100 cow herd with about 800 heifers, and it'll take about 3 minutes to actually run the information before we can look at the data. But if you happen to have a larger herd, it may go up to 5 or 6 minutes if you're looking at 3,000 cows, or if you only have several hundred cows, it may only take a minute or two. So I'm going to go back to something that I've already set up before. So here's the information that I previously set up before, same setup. And then I will have a view results button will pop up when it's done. So now we've actually have ran the information. So these are the results of all that data that we pulled in from our Dart Sync data on the individual cows. We talked about her production, her genetics, and her reproductive status. We pulled in the herd information, some averages, and then we also are looking at the individual inputs that we keyed in. So if I am looking through this, it says the information when it was last ran, the type of where the data source is. I'm using Dart Sync, and I'm evaluating both the cows and the heifers. So after we have it, it looks, so KeepOrBeef calculates future cash flows for each cow based on her best estimated future performance for milk production, fertility, force culling, genetic merit, and other data that we talked about earlier. The Keep dollar value that we see right here is the difference between the net present value of the Keep decision and replacing the cow with a heifer. With this economic value is greater for a cow, the more valuable the cow is to keep in the herd. Cows that have a low Keep value should be called and replaced. The cows are also have a Keep percentile, which provides an easy rank of how to choose which cows have a low Keep value should be called. The cows are ranked separately from the heifers. So if you're looking at the Keep percentile, that will be different than for the cows than if the percentile for the heifers. So now let's look at the actual data. So we can click on any of these headings up here and it will resort. So if I click on the Keep value dollars, it shows the lowest dollar value for the individual cows. So now it shows that 4986 has the lowest Keep value. If I happen to click on her number, it brings up a new tab. And so now this actually goes to one of our other web products called Cow Compass. So as we are looking at this cow, it shows that she's currently dry. And this is what her herd mate deviation, she's a minus 3,300 pounds for milk, minus 426 for fat, minus 179 for protein. So if we look at some of the lactation data, we see that she's currently in her 8th lactation. This is a fairly high producing herd, but still, if you scroll to the right, you see her herd mate deviations. Her last 2 lactations hasn't been very well compared to her herd mates. She's been negative in both lactations. Her rating score has also been in the bottom of the herd. One of the other variables that goes into is her genetic data. If we look at her genetic tab, we'll see that her net merit dollar value is 32. So that is pretty low considering the herd is averaging a positive 482 for net merit dollars. So all those parameters that we looked at kind of explains as to why this cow was listed on the bottom of our Keep values. So she obviously is a potential cull. If I click on the heading again, it will resort. So now we have our highest cow listed. So now we see 8550 has the highest value. So if we dig down deeper and look at her, it brings it up in a new tab. And we see that she is currently in milk. She's 300 days in milk. This is her first lactation. If we look at her test day, her last test day, she was 286 days in milk, still milking over 100 pounds of milk for her first lactation cow. If we look at all of her total lactation, so we can see that at 300 days, she's over 33,000 pounds of production, 1487 for fat, over 1,000 pounds for protein. Her projected record is over 40,000 pounds of milk. Her herd mate deviation, she's plus 10,800 for milk. She has a low cell count average. And obviously she's going to be one of our highest rating cows. But let's check her genetic data. And so will she pass that genetic information on? So we see that her net merit dollar value is a plus 1,075. And we mentioned the herd average is plus 482. So obviously all those parameters that we just talked about really shows that she is a really good cow, and all that information does justify this keep value of 3,600. So in addition to the keep value, 3 economic insemination values are calculated for breeding the cow to either sex dairy, conventional dairy, or beef semen. So the 3 insemination values are then ranked for each cow, and the highest recommendation with the highest economic merit is presented as our first semen choice. The next highest value is listed as the second semen choice. And then there's the dollar difference between the first over the second choice. So that's provided to determine the economic difference between using first semen choice, in this case, sex semen, over our second choice, which is conventional. So the higher that dollar value is, the stronger the recommendation is on using your first semen choice. An additional value that's listed is show breed now. So that is used to determine if now is the best economic time to breed her, or if breeding should be delayed. So a lot of times a no result could also indicate that she should not be bred at all, especially if that's combined with a low keep value. If a cow is just recently fresh and is not even close to a voluntary waiting period, those cows will normally show a no for breed now, because obviously she's just recently fresh. You don't want to breed her now. And the first semen choice is going to be a beef, because the semen recommendations are, if you decide to breed the cow now, what should you use? So we're going to recommend that you use beef if you decide that you want to breed the cow now, because the likelihood of her conceiving at, let's say, 20 days of milk is pretty low. So you might as well use the lowest semen costs. So as we see, this cow 8550 is recommending you're breeding her to sex semen, and her dollar value is $61 over her second choice. So, and that dollar value is fairly high, obviously, so she'd be first on the list to breed a sex semen. So this can be very helpful if you happen to have, let's say, 30 cows to breed, and you want to only breed 10 to sex semen, but there's 15 on the list that has sex semen as your first choice. So what you would do is you would rank those 15 based upon their dollar value of first over second. Those with the highest, the top 10, would be the ones that would use this for sex semen, and then the rest you would choose their second choice. So dairy farmers can use the combination of the keep percentile for the cow and the first semen choice to determine which cows to actually breed. In addition to the individual cow information for keep value and breeding choices, we also have a summary table. The summary table provides an idea of what % of the herd is recommended to breed to sex, conventional, or beef semen. And it only summarizes the animals that are listed to breed now, because otherwise, if we were to include those that we say do not breed now, you're going to have a little higher percentage of being bred to beef. So the data is also broken down by lactation. So we see here for the whole herd that we have 34% of the herd of the cows are suggested to be breed to sex semen, and 66% of the cows are bred to suggest we breed to beef. As expected, Those animals that we recommend you breed to sex semen have a higher keep value than those that we recommend breeding to beef. But there aren't any listed for their first choice for conventional. That's because if we go back to our setup, we indicated that there's only $10 difference between conventional dairy semen costs and beef semen costs, but there's over $200 difference between the revenue of a dairy bull calf versus a dairy beef calf. So economically, it's wiser to use beef semen as opposed to conventional semen in hopes that to get a beef cross. But if we go over to our second choice, then obviously a lot of those that we initially recommend using sex semen, their second choice would be conventional. So we're going to see more conventionals listed here. Now we also have us listed for the heifers. Quite often you're going to see most of the heifers, especially on a high producing herd, are going to be recommended that you breed to sex semen. And that's kind of what happens quite often. The replacement, the heifers are your better genetic animals. So you want to have more replacements out of your replacements. And so in that case, that's where most of them are going to be used for sex semen. So if these numbers aren't quite what you would expect, in other words, if you see that it's recommending to breed a whole herd to sex semen or breed a whole herd to beef semen, then we want to go back to our setup and check these values here that we recorded. So do we have our semen costs correct? And also is the revenue from having a dairy bull calf versus a dairy beef calf, are those correct values? If you don't have hardly any beef recommendations, this is where you would want to slide the emphasis on bringing the beef up a little bit and then run the job again. The other thing to keep in mind is your heifer raising costs and cull cow revenue. If your cull cow revenue is really high and your heifer raising cost is low, well, then it may be more economically to cull more animals as opposed to breeding them. So once again, this is trying to establish what is the best economic approach to breeding an animal or culling her. And if you are going to breed the animal, what's the best economic return, whether to use sex semen, conventional, or beef. So as we mentioned, it's used to maximize the economic return in these decisions. If we look at our results, we also see two options up here. Export results to CSV. Now what that means is we can go ahead and just export this information here to a CSV or to a spreadsheet. Download results to Dart. So a producer, once they run this job, their data will this information here will automatically be put out there for them to download directly into Dart. Now, consultants can also choose this option here. If you select that, it will download a file. You'll see here the herdcode.kl file. Once that file is available, a consultant that uses Dart can copy that file directly into the herd code folder of the herd that they are evaluating. So once that is done, we can look at Dart. So an individual producer will have this button up here that says Get New Data from DRMS. If they run the KeepOrBeef program and they get the results, a file will automatically, as I mentioned, will be made available for them to directly download. They do not have to go back and select this here, the file will automatically be made available to them. They just need to click this Get New Data from DRMS, and it will automatically be pulled down directly to them. And then consultants can copy the file over. So once the data is in Dart, what can you do with it? So one option is if we are looking at a cow page, and if I want to bring up that 8550 cow, we can put on our custom tab here, the KeepOrBeef information. So I've designed it so here we see that 3600 is our keep value for that cow, and our semen choice is sex semen with a difference of 61. And as we mentioned, that was the data that we saw. If we were to refer back to, here is the 8550 cow, 3600 and sex semen. So that same information that we saw here can be downloaded directly into Dart, and it can show on their individual page there. You can also create a report. So if I do have a list of cows and heifers to breed automatically, I can add that data. So then when I preview it, I can see that these are the cows I want to breed. Here's their keep value. Here's the percentile. And this is what we recommend as far as the semen choice, and then our dollar value. So that can also be seen on a report. And if you want to look at the design, so here's those DBIs, and then we can just go ahead and add those to any report. Maybe it's a coloring report that you've already designed previously, and you can add the keep dollar and keep percentile to that coloring report. So a lot of different options that you can use and put the information back into Dart directly, whether you're a consultant or whether you're a producer using Dart. So KeepOrBeef results are very time sensitive, and they work best based on current data, using the results to make decisions. Therefore, we suggest you create KeepOrBeef report after vet check has been entered. Once that vet check data has been entered, and especially if you're using the Dart Sync program, that gets uploaded to us, generally then that data will be loaded to our database, and then you can run the KeepOrBeef information. Also suggest you run the KeepOrBeef report after DHI test day data has been processed. So if you don't use PC Dart, you can get that data directly using KeepOrBeef and your last test day information. Or if you are using Dart, make sure you've done the test day update, and then we've loaded the Dart Sync data to our system. And then you can run the information off of the Dart Sync data that also includes the most recent test day data. So that way you'll have more current information as far as which cows are producing the best in your herd. Consider data such as health data prior to making the culling decision using the KeepOrBeef results. The KeepOrBeef information will just kind of give you a keep value based upon the data that we know about. Currently, we haven't included any health data in there. So obviously, if you happen to have a cow that has a lot of mastitis problems in the past, or currently just has some other health problems, her keep value may be fairly high, but those health problems will kind of push her to the top of the list for potential calls. We also recommend to use the KeepOrBeef semen recommendations to run those weekly to avoid any data drift. That's because if you happen to do those cows that were previously weren't quite at the voluntary waiting period may now be past that. So now we may recommend you go ahead and breed them. And now their breeding choice may have changed from previously it may have been beef, but now we're going to suggest that maybe she should be used sex semen. So that's why we strongly encourage you to run the KeepOrBeef program weekly to make sure to avoid any data drift along that option. So the KeepOrBeef will help dairy farmers make more informed breeding and culling decisions. This new tool is very time sensitive and will use the most current data available. DART sync and frequent DHI tests will ensure changes in production or reproductive status are reflected in the cow's relative economic value in the herd. So you may have a cow that was going along, she's pregnant, she's 200 days in milk, doing great. She's maybe already 160 days pregnant, and she slips the calf, and now her reproductive status is greatly changed. So by using that new information, her keep value has probably dropped. Her breeding recommendations has greatly changed because now she's way out there at 200 days in milk. She maybe already been bred 3 times, so maybe her semen recommendations has changed to something economically more like a beef option. So that's why you indicate that it's very time sensitive, because cow's status changes so drastically from time to time. So as I mentioned, our KeepOrBeef program is fairly new. We launched it at World Dairy Expo earlier this month. So right now, if any producers that currently process with us or any consultants that use our data would like to use our web product, they can just email me with their name, their account ID, which would be their herd code, their OTH or DRMS consultant account, a phone number, and whether or not they are using DART. So with that information, then we will go ahead and turn that herd HQ option on. So right now, producers and consultants, if they go to our website, they will not see this herd HQ option. Once I get that email and we turn that option on, you will see the KeepOrBeef, and you'll also see these other herd HQ products that will be available to you. So if you're wondering what our other herd HQ products are, we talked about Cow Compass a little bit. Dairy Depot is our dashboard approach. Activity alerts is a more time sensitive, mainly for those herds that are using DART. Milk Metrics is our benchmarking tool. Heifer Hub is a great projection as far as seeing how many replacements I need down the road, 2.5, 3 years from our breeding decisions. And we mentioned our KeepOrBeef tool. So once I have that information, as we mentioned here, then we'll go ahead and turn you on the option. The herd HQ products are all available through the rest of the year at no charge. We strongly encourage you to take advantage of that. And then in December, we'll give you some more information as far as how to officially turn out on that option, as well as any charges. So with that, I think I have a lot of time for questions. And I'll turn it back to Fred.
Greg, thank you very much. Very informative. And we do have a pretty good battery of questions coming up. If you want to go ahead and click on your chat, the first question is kind of lengthy, but it involves cow 8049. So you may want to pull her up
Okay.
off of your list so we can be on the same page. You said first of a second choice dollar, the higher the value you should use first choice. But on this example, the choice is 8. So why wouldn't her first choice be 6?
Okay, let's look at her. Not sure where she was, but we'll find her. We'll sort by 80 animal index and see if we can't find them a little quicker. This is 1,000 cows, so it's going to take a while to go through.
Okay.
$80.49, getting close. Okay, $80.49. So if we look at her, so let's look at her a little closer. So right now, she is 235 days open. She may have a high keep value because she's producing really well right now, but she's way out there as far as repro status goes. She's 235 days open. She's already been bred 4 times. So on that option, we indicate that she probably should be using beef on her because the economic return of her being way out there, already being bred to beef, the semen cost difference would be based upon that.
Okay. Should she even have a 6th choice?
So what we're saying that the economic, the difference between, so then we start looking at the other options, conventional versus sex. So, you know, the problem with the conventional is that half the time you're going to get a bull calf, and the economic return on that dairy bull calf is almost nothing. So if she does happen to have a heifer, you could probably sell that heifer. And the difference between the semen cost is substantial between sex semen and versus beef, but the outcome of the revenue, if she happens to have a heifer, you can sell a heifer for more than you could a dairy bull calf. So that's why we're not seeing a whole lot of conventional being recommended, unless it's the sex versus down to conventional.
Okay, if Andrea has another question, just go ahead and enter that. Our next question, is this tool based solely on economics, or does it factor in how many replacements the herd needs?
Now, right now, this is solely on economics, because it's looking at the current, it doesn't know which cows you're going to actually breed. It tells you what the economic value of breeding that cow. As you see, we have recommendation on cows that are pregnant, because we don't know if this cow is going to, you know, slip her calf, or if she stays pregnant and also her next lactation, or what her status is going to be. So it's based upon the economics strictly. So that's where I indicated that you want to change the, if we go back to our setup, if you do want to use more beef, slide this over. And when you actually are looking at cows that you want to breed, if you know you're going to breed 30 cows today, and in order to maintain herd size, in order to look at the number of replacements you need, you know that you only want to breed 10 of those as sex semen, but you got 15 that says use sex semen, then you want to use that dollar value to determine which are my best options to breed as sex. and those top 10 are the ones you want to use. Our other tool, as I mentioned, on our Herd HQ products, our Heifer Hub area does look at doing those replacement projections to see if I'm going to breed 30 cows this week and I need to maintain my herd size, what percent of them do I need to, and if I use my current breeding strategies, will I have enough heifers down the road when those calves actually are born 9 months from now, and then those calves go into the milking herd, will I have enough? So that's where our Heifer Hub web-based product actually looks at projections on maintaining herd size. So this is strictly from an economic view in making those breeding decisions.
Okay. Is there a way you can mix heifers and cows for ranking and in the decision process?
You can look at their keep value. The percentiles are ranks the cows and the heifers separately. But you can look at a keep value to see if a heifer has a higher keep value than a cow. And the reason why we rank those separately is based upon, we know that this cow, what her production is and what she did produce. And on the heifers, we're strictly going on genetics as far as her genetic data and where she's at as far as her age goes and where she's at as far as her reproductive status. So we don't have that production aspect into the heifers in order to feel that we can use rank them with the percentile of mixing the cows and the heifers. So that's why we separate the cows out from the heifers.
Okay, we've got a question on how do you know what does the emphasis on breeding to beef should be set? Is there a rule of thumb? I'm ad-libbing here. Her question is it correct that it doesn't sound like it's related to percent beef offspring you desire? What does the choice really reflect?
Yeah, so if you go back to our setup, it's not what percent of the herd are you currently using beef. It's kind of a giving you that little more emphasis on shoving that economic. If we were to strictly look at economics and don't include this emphasis, then we may say, well, economically, you want as many heifers as you can get because you can sell them for more, but you really don't want any more replacements. And so this is where you kind of shove that emphasis around and then look at your results. So kind of a benchmark thing, if you are currently using beef on half of your herd, I would say you want to use your emphasis around the 80 percentile. So I ran this at the 88 percentile. And when I look at my results and I look at the summary data, it shows that 66% of our breeding recommendations were to beef. So if your recommendations and that summary isn't quite where you think you want it to be, then that's where you go back, slide your emphasis a little bit one way or the other. If you had too many, and if it's still not coming out to where you think it should be, then look at those other parameters. Look at the your cull price. Look at your heifer raising costs. And you want to be as truthful as possible on those numbers and not what the heifer raising cost. It always costs more to raise a heifer than most people think. And so you want to be really realistic in those. We've seen a lot of people put them down there like $1,200. Well, it's saying, after you've, and the call price is way high. Well, it's saying that you need to, call more animals then. So, but do you want your price information as realistic as possible.
Greg points out that dairy bull calves are bringing more than $150.
Yeah.
If that price is $250, does that make much change on the breedings? Does
So
that make conventional use more?
yeah, so it's going to be more of the variation between the bull calf and the beef calf. If you're seeing hardly any difference between a dairy bull calf revenue and a dairy beef calf revenue, then you're not going to see much recommendation in beef, because you probably aren't going to see a whole lot of difference between the conventional and beef semen costs. So it's more that variation between these two values that is going to kind of dictate whether to use beef semen or whether to use conventional. So kind of look, but yeah, if you increase that to 250, but you keep your dairy beef at 375, then right, you're going to probably see more conventional semen being recommended as opposed to beef semen.
We've got a couple questions that had come in early. Give folks a chance if they have additional questions to go ahead and put them there in the chat, or if they want to unmute and just ask directly. I'll kind of hold off for just a second if I see anybody unmute. Okay, while we're waiting. For instance, if a producer has a battery of registered cows in his herd that he's selling offspring out of, and can he lock them out of this? I mean, he wants to use KeepOrBeef on his herd, but out of the 1,000 cows, these 35 he doesn't want to accidentally breed to a beef bull. Is there a way they can lock out specific cows?
Not specific cows. It may be, yeah, so he would just need to recognize that those are the animals that they don't want to follow those recommendations on. The other options would be if they happen to be into a different strain, but most cases they're not going to be. But yeah, so that would be not a possibility. It may be an eye opener as to whether or not those special cows are as good as what they think they are. So looking at the keep value.
Yeah.
So.
Us purebred guys, registered guys, sometimes we get a little weird on this. I have another question. In my area, I would say a lot of herds are crossbreeding dairy. So if I have for instance, a pro cross herd and I want part of them to be beef, how does that affect how we set this up, knowing that there'll be different breeds every generation?
Yeah, so a lot of that is going to be looking at the genetic data. You can choose, if they're all going to be mixed, which they probably are going to be, you're going to select XX. If you do have any that are straight hostings or straight jerseys or straight, whatever the case is, then you may want to run those breeds individually and then run your crossbreds on their own. So a couple of different options that you can choose that way. So hopefully we do have genetic data. CDCB is doing genetic information on crossbred animals as well. So that genetic information, they do have the parentage and the lineage of the breeds going back further. So they do know what those crosses are. And so that genetic information is going to play big into that. But yeah, if you have a crossbred Jersey Ayrshire compared to a crossbred hosting brown Swiss. A crossbred is a crossbred. And so, yeah, it's going to think that those Holstein brown Swiss are higher producer than your Jersey Ayrshire cross. So they're going to get ranked a little bit higher as far as herd mates and so forth. So that is a little more difficult and to look into those keep values.
Very good. I'm looking through the list of attendees and I'm seeing some folks who always have great questions. Jim Salfer from Minnesota, what's on your mind? Have you got a question that absolutely needs to be asked here?
Well, I don't know if I have any questions. I think it's interesting. So Greg, where does this fit in with all the others? Zoetis and all the AI companies are also going around sort of doing maybe not quite this KeepOrBeef her, but do you want to comment how these, how this would fit in? Why would I sign up with this versus just having my select rep or Genix rep or Zoetis rep kind of tell me what I should be breeding them to?
Yeah, and we have, or I have talked with a couple of, we do have a couple of AI groups that have been using this. And one of the things that I think the KeepOrBeef takes into consideration more information. It looks at past lactations, it looks at her repro status, it looks how many times she's been bred, it looks at her genetic data as well. So it includes more information than what a lot of other groups have available to them, just because of the pure data source that we have available. So I think we include more information in that calculation. If you're looking at the keep value there, especially, it's a very, very involved algorithm, something that we can't run on a PC. That's why one main reason why this is web-based, because it has to use some pretty strong computer processing in order to generate those numbers. And because of the work that we've done with Albert DeVries and putting this together out of University of Florida. And so I think when you're looking at those other recommendations, and they are good products and very similar, but when you get right down to it, I think this has a little bit more of an edge because it's using more timely data. If you're using the DartSync information, it's as of today, as of yesterday, as of your last vet check, your last DHI test day data, and uses more of it. So.
Thanks.
Okay, are there any other folks who have questions?
Fred, I have a question.
Okay, Dale.
Greg, can you use that split up there on your beginning portion where strings to sort out that group of fancy cows for Fred?
If they do actually have their herds specifically set up by strings. Most
if
herds
they have them
won't.
set up by strings. Okay.
Yeah. Most herds won't have. Strings are generally either location or ownership, or which they could if the son has all the registered cattle and so forth. But primarily it's also breed as far as strings. But that would have to be set up in advance. They would have to already be using strings in order to set that up.
Okay, I'm just thinking that on some of our herds, they've got their flush cows and so forth, and they know which ones they are. They could add them into that string, and that way they could actually look at that group as a separate group and apply some of these same items to them and get some ranking of their economic worth from just simply a commercial situation also.
Yeah.
Very good.
But there, as I mentioned, I think when you're looking at strong economics and looking at what actually is going to pay the bill. You got to compare that special cow with the cow that's pumping it out day in and day out, and see which one is actually going to pay the bills more than others.
Yeah, I understand.
Other than sides, you know, the thing that doesn't obviously know is the health condition. It doesn't know the type of the cow. So, you know, if someone is selling heifers out of a line of cows that they're flushing for show cattle, then obviously that's not going to be included in the keep value. So.
Very good. Well, we've had a lot of really great questions today. I'm not seeing any more in the chat box, and I'll wait just a second to see if somebody unmutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's anything else? Want to thank Fred and the entire I-29 Moo University group for inviting me to provide you with a new tool for dairy producers in making your culling and breeding decisions. And as I mentioned, if you are interested, send me your information and we'll set you up so you can look at our Herd HQ line of products and primarily the KeepOrBeef.
Well, thank you very much, Greg. For those who are still on with us, we invite you to be part of our evaluation. If you look up at the chat box, we have a Qualtrics survey set up. It's very short, just 4 questions, but it helps us develop webinars for the future. And also we want you to be aware that we will archive this program. It takes about 5-6 working days. So at this point, we appreciate everybody who's attended. We look forward to seeing you at the next Moo University webinar. Thank you again, Greg.
Thank you. Bye.